Call this meeting to order of the Wilmington City Council. We're going to do our budget retreat today, and at this time, we're going to ask our city clerk to please do the roll call for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. Roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Spears, are you on?
Yeah, I guess you can call it there.
Sir, appreciate you. Councilmember Joyner. Councilmember Celeste Andrews. Councilmember J.C. Lau. Councilmember Cassidy. Councilmember Chikima. And my mayor, Bill
Here.
Saffo. Thank you.
Here.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Everybody's here and accounted for?
Mayor. Yes, sir.
Okay.
All
I'm going to
right.
turn it over to Ms. Hawk. Ms. Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, and staff members. Appreciate everybody coming together this morning for our third budget work session. We anticipate this to be our final work session before we gear up for the official budget presentation at the beginning of May. We do have a lot of meaty information to get through with you this morning. Some of these slides are kind of dense, so we may spend a little bit of time on each of them, but certainly stop, ask questions. We want to make sure that folks understand. We spend some time looking at some historical trends to kind of help set the stage for sort of where we are, what we're anticipating for next year. Certainly make sure that council members who have not been through a full budget cycle with us before understand some of these things that sort of shape our numbers and what some of these driving issues are that give us challenges or opportunities, and then kind of where we are with the requests that we've received and the associated tax rate implications of those. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Maybe. There we go. So the budget development schedule, just a reminder that, again, our third work session, the presentation will be on the 5th of May. The budget public hearing is then scheduled for May 19th, and we will continue to have budget work sessions throughout that process with an expected budget adoption either June 2nd or June 16th, depending on council's readiness to move forward. Statutorily, we need a budget adopted by June 30th. So we do have additional opportunities for other meetings if council feels like it's warranted.
Oh, we do it at City Hall and as well as at Star News and the media and social media. Do you have anything else?
My office sends it to all media outlets. We literally send them an email announcing the budget.
We have a calendar on the city website. Can we add this to the calendar?
Sure.
Because candidly, last night I was trying to make sure I got here on time today, and it wasn't on the city calendar. So.
Okay. We'll make sure to do that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I thought it started at 8, so we're good.
We were here early.
All right, so again, just trying to lay some groundwork and understanding. We wanted to spend some time talking about natural revenue growth and then sort of ongoing operational pressures. And so as council works through the policy decisions of where you ultimately want to put your money, there are a lot of competing pressures on those decisions. We are, of course, dealing with rising costs. We are in a situation where we have slowed natural revenue growth, which we'll talk about more in some of the upcoming slides. We, of course, need to make sure that we remain financially sustainable as we look not just to next year, but for future years. And then desired service levels always come into this conversation. What are we trying to deliver to our community? What are their expectations? And then what is a realistic look at what it costs in order to truly do that? If you squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, ultimately it ends up impacting service. And sometimes that's okay. But making sure that these are intentional, known decisions and conversations that we're having to understand the impacts of the decisions that we make. So what is natural revenue growth? It's a term that we throw around quite a bit, but what it actually means is it's that typical annual natural increase that you get through natural growth or through increased buying, or even when there's inflation, if things cost more, then the tax that is assessed on those items generates more revenue. And so when you are in a period in a community of sort of explosive growth, like we're seeing across the bridge, that natural revenue growth often more than covers your needs for the next year. You essentially have more money coming in than you have direct costs. It is a time of prosperity. You don't have to have tough conversations about tax rates, and you're able to kind of continue doing what you want to do. But whether it is in communities that have slowed growth or in communities that are largely built out, so there's just not a lot of opportunity for growth, or in periods of reduced buying or even recessions, these natural growth numbers then are constricted, and in some cases they even end up in the negative, but they're something less than ideal as far as just that natural cost of doing business. Those natural rises in costs are not covered by the new revenue that comes in without having to look at the rates that you're charging for things. And modest or incremental has been the typical history for Wilmington. About 2% a year has been fairly typical. But as we look to FY27, it is clear that the cost pressures that we are experiencing are not keeping up with the natural growth that we are expecting for next year. And just a few of the examples are, of course, the wage pressures that we've been talking about what does it mean to pay an employee what we need to keep them with our organization or attract them. Significant healthcare cost escalations that we'll talk about, retirement contributions that are set by the state. The state retirement plan sets those percentages for us, and that is to keep the plan at a healthy funding level to be able to meet its obligations. And so we have to absorb those. And then a number of contracts that is very typical that we sign for multi-year contracts. It's a 2% or a 3% or a 5-year or a 5% escalation annually in those rates that we need to find the money to pay to continue to have that service and meet that contractual obligation. So we spent some time pulling together historical data because we felt like it painted just some good pictures for council to understand sort of where we are today, how we got here, and then what we are looking at for FY27. And so the chart that you have in front of you goes back to 2018. We have had 3 revaluations during that time. And the blue bars are the assessed value. So that was sort of the value of all of the real property in the community. The yellow line with the little stars or squares, diamonds in each of them, that was the levy. So that was the amount of revenue that the city received based on the tax rate that it was charging. And as you can see, we have had notable upticks in valuation both in 2022 and then 2026, with then relatively modest growth in the actual revenue that we are receiving as a result. So just as an example, back in 2018, we were receiving $72 million in revenue off of valuation in the city of $14.9 billion. In FY26, that valuation has increased to $35.3 billion, and we are receiving $99 million in tax revenue. So what does that mean for next year? We have gotten some numbers back from the county, and it would be safe to say that growth, that natural growth, is expected to significantly slow next year. So taking everything into account, the natural growth in tax revenue from real property is expected to only be 0.79% next year. That is largely due to the revaluation appeals. When somebody gets their new property value, they have the opportunity to challenge it. There's a formal process that the county handles in order to see if there is merit to that challenge, and if so, a new valuation is set, and then we receive less tax revenue than anticipated from that original property valuation. And so we just take that as it comes. There is a certain percentage that is built into projections. We anticipate a certain level of what we call appeal loss. as we look at the expected revenues for both FY26 and 27. But what we are seeing is outpacing that. We've got some questions out to the county as far as just the exact percentages that they anticipated versus what we are realizing. But if you look at the second row of numbers down, I know there's a lot of data on here, but that property base for total property value is the one to really pay attention to here. And what that is saying is that from FY26 to FY27, the property base, which is the real property, not motor vehicles, in Wilmington is expected to only go up by $50 million next year. That feels really low when we think about the development and all of that. There's a few factors with that. One, they look at what was coming out of the ground on January 1st. So if there is additional development that happens in a given year, it can take a little while for the revenue to catch up with, or the valuation to catch up with what's happening. But that $50 million is essentially the net new. So it took all of the new development that we had minus the appeal loss, and then the $50 million is what we are expecting to have. And so that's where you're really getting the significant impact on the slow natural growth that we have. It's because of the net result of the appeal loss that we're experiencing that is essentially gobbling up any of the benefit that we might have seen from the new development that has in fact come online. And that is just something that we're not alone in that, but it is something that we are having to take into account as we look at our property tax rate and our costs.
I have a
So,
question,
yes.
and this may be on a kind of topic side. What is the anticipated growth for the? Sorry. What is the? Thank you. What is the anticipated growth for the ongoing service costs? What's
More than 0.79%.
but do you have a range at least?
We've got some slides ahead that show what what we're calling the base budget increases are, and then what the requests are. So that's a few slides ahead that we can show those dollar values. What this is also doing, if you then look at the 1 cent options on value, that's essentially what does 1 penny on the tax rate generate for us in terms of revenue. And so for FY26, we were at $3.515 million per penny. So very modest increase based on the slow amount of natural growth. So we expect in FY27 that same penny will only generate 28,000 additional dollars than it does this year. And so it's a very modest amount of increase that we're seeing for that same taxation. That same penny only generates a little bit more in FY27, and that is based on the slow amount of natural growth that we're seeing. So referenced it on the previous slide, but sort of what is driving this. This is information from New Hanover County, and they provided this for all of the jurisdictions. But essentially this is looking at our total assessed value as part of FY26. We have thus far had 2,548 parcels submit an appeal to the county. The total valuation of those appeals was $7.9 billion. An additional 69 parcels in the MSD did the same thing. Their total valuation is worth $682 million, and the value loss of those, all of those combined after the appeals, you're at about $1.9 billion in lost valuation that then impacts your amount of revenue that you'll be receiving because you are taxing a lower value on the overall property of the community.
Is that normal?
Yes.
Okay. This is something that other communities see too.
Very much so. That it's really sort of trying to look into a crystal ball if you're the county in terms of making the projections of what the anticipated appeal loss is going to be. They try to pick a number that is fairly aggressive in terms of then wanting to come out to the good, right? You don't want to underestimate what your appeal loss is going to be, but it's really a guess, and it looks like in this case, they maybe guesstimated a little bit less than the reality that we are then seeing. A great example of where this got really bad was like during the recession. So a lot of communities had revaluations in 2008, and then the recession hit. And I know communities were needing to then refund dollars on top of the lower valuations to the tune of millions and millions of dollars that they had in the bank that they thought were theirs that they then had to send back to property owners. So it gets really messy. It gets very expensive. Again, we've got some questions out to the county as far as what those exact percentages were and now are and what they're fully projecting. We don't have that back yet, but we'll share that information with council once we have it. But they're not done. This is only partway through the process, so we expect these numbers are going to go up from here. But this is what they have locked in on today.
Question, in New Hanover County Fire District, can you explain that?
Yeah, so there are certain parts of New Hanover County that are unincorporated that pay a special levy to be protected by the fire departments in New Hanover County.
So it's always been my understanding, and maybe this is just hearsay, that if they go up in the fire district tax, it pulls away from our sales tax revenue as to what we collect. Is that correct? So they could say, we're not going to raise taxes, but if you raise the New Hanover County Fire District tax, they still get a higher percentage of the sales tax revenue, because right now they're getting 80, we're getting about 20, if that. We're probably below that.
We're 26,
Huh?
about 26%.
We're 26%, so we're getting 26 cents out of every dollar they spend. They're getting the rest of it. But if they go up on the fire district tax rate, then they get more of that?
That is correct.
Conversely, if we go up on our tax rate
Correct,
and
if
they
it's the
stay
reverse.
flat, then we do see a
But
higher
does it
percentage.
offset, but does it offset because the New Hanover County Fire District tax, and I don't know what that number is right now, but if that goes up, let's just say a penny or 2 pennies for the fire protection in unincorporated areas, does it offset even if we go up, let's just say whatever it is, does it offset that?
It would offset it a little bit.
Some.
Yeah, it would.
There's a very fun convoluted spreadsheet that you can fill out that like finally gets you to that number, but it's like 17 steps to do the calculation to figure out what it is. It also lags by a year. So whatever happened last year is what we will anticipate for 27. Whatever we do in 27, we won't see the impacts of that on sales tax revenue until 28.
So, as far as these appeals are going, when will we know? I mean, are the appeals still in progress? They haven't been decided
They
yet,
are.
right? So,
The-
and the idea is that entire value will likely not go to zero. Is that correct?
Correct. So the sometimes appeals are denied and the value stays the same, and then it's very property by property. But no, certainly something doesn't go to zero. But we are seeing significant losses from that. That is driving the 0.79% growth rate expected for next year. But the deadline to even file your appeal is it May?
I believe it's May.
Yeah, so there are still people who haven't even filed yet that still can. So it is a months-long process, and so the number that we will have for FY27 will also be a projection because we won't know exactly how it will land out, but we rely on the county to provide those projections to us based on what they're seeing in the county, how the appeals have gone so far, what that average loss is, to try to narrow in on a dollar amount.
And to
Okay.
give you an example, in FY22, when we had the reval, it was the first time that it went up so significantly at 30%, and it took us 2 years to come back to normal because of the appeals and the amount of appeals. But this time, it's the same level of appeals, so it will probably take a little bit, the same amount of time.
Okay. And then, I don't know if I did this math a couple of times. So if we have 7.9 billion in property taxes that are being appealed, valuations that are being appealed, and that represents 2,548 parcels. That means that on average, no, I just off my calculator. The average parcel is $3.1 million
You would have some very large tracts that are appealing.
that are appealing.
Mhm.
So, you know, the idea that this is, you know, mom and pop that are appealing,
I would call it a broad spectrum.
it's a broad
You're-
spectrum,
Mhm.
but really on average, these are very large properties that are appealing.
We could get a printout of the exact parcels to see, like the mean, median, mode kind of thing.
Yeah.
That may help provide more of a picture of that. I would hate to characterize because some of these are going to be single-family property owners, but the numbers I think are skewing from these large tracts, large landholders that would be driving up that average that you're seeing.
Yeah, I'd like to see the printout.
Sure. And that is something that, once it is decided, if they have already paid their tax bills based on the unappealed number, then we then also need to issue the refunds. And so, it can be kind of a double hit for those first 2 years in terms of having to not only take the lower amount of new revenue, but then also pay them back for what was deemed to be an overpayment.
And frankly, it is more difficult for the single-family home that's in a subdivision to succeed in an appeal because they have so many.
There's a lot of
comparables.
costs.
Right,
Mhm,
okay.
mhm. So when we look at our current property tax rate, we are sitting at 28.25 cents per $100 of valuation. We do split that toward a number of different initiatives. General Services receives the bulk at 21.81 cents. We do have a dedicated affordable housing amount that equates to 0.67 cents. 5.1 cents goes to debt services, and then an additional 0.67 towards CIP maintenance. And as mentioned on the previous slide, 1 cent is 3.543 million. So again, looking back at historicals, we also found this interesting that we wanted to include. This is, I think, really just a good reminder as we go through revaluation processes, and we do see these notable upticks in valuation. Sort of what happens based on staying revenue neutral is the blue line or the blue box, where the city landed on its actual levies is the red, and then the tan is what would have happened if we had just left our tax rate flat. So we are in no way suggesting that that should have happened. There are certainly communities that have and do that, and they use that big uptick in revenue in that first year to say do a big slug of capital improvement funding, and then they tick down as they get closer to the next reval, skew back on the capital funding and use it for the natural increases in the cost of operation, and then do it all over again at the next reval. So there are different ways to do this. Obviously, the giant tick from FY 25 to 26, again, we're not suggesting that's what should have happened, but we want to lift this up just as a reminder of what can be seen as sort of untapped potential in our tax base based on the tax rate that we are levying, and that there are different ways to approach this as we move forward related to perhaps not having to necessarily have mid-cycle conversations about tax increases, because we basically went so tight to stay as close to revenue neutral as possible that then when things come up after that revaluation, we're having to have conversations about tax increases and what we need to actually complete the business that we need to when that potential had been there at every reval, depending on what you wanted to do with your tax rate. So we're 3 years away from another reval, but just keep in mind that this is the spikes that we've seen in the valuations of property across the city. Moving on to sales tax estimates, we are also seeing a slowing of what we expect to be the natural growth in sales tax. Really the entire state, or at least some of the more urban areas, saw very large increases in natural sales tax growth, particularly in FY24 and 25. It is flattening out, even though inflation continues to drive up the cost of goods. We are expecting a contraction in the amount of natural growth as buying slows down in response to those increased costs. So the 2.5% that we are projecting for FY27 is actually a slightly aggressive projection. It is higher than what you will see our neighbors projecting. We do feel, based on our historical data in Wilmington, that this is a pretty safe projection to anticipate for FY27, but it does represent a slowing compared to what we have been able to count on or enjoy in prior years. So to summarize all of that, our property tax performance is a bit below our expectations. Again, a lot of that is due to the appeals that are continuing to work through the process. That does create downstream pressure on our overall revenue stability as we try to continue to provide services to the community. Sales tax growth is also moderated by those external factors where we are expecting only modest growth. We, of course, continue to have a lot of economic uncertainty and international conditions that put a lot of that into question, where we just don't know. These factors will be beyond our control and will, of course, impact everybody, not just Wilmington. We do have some historical underutilized revenue capacity, but the strategic implications here are just to continue to review the impacts of those factors and then think about opportunities in the future to align with what our fiscal goals are and what we need to continue to do business. So as we look then to FY27, just a bit of a recap of organizational priorities. We've talked extensively about some of these, and then some of these are going to be new today. But we are, of course, embarking actively on an organizational realignment to find organizational efficiencies. Got some more detail on that in the coming slides. Recruitment and retention is vitally important for us to ensure competitiveness and align with organizational expectations for performance. We do have some non-negotiable items in the budget where we know we need to fund health insurance. We know we need to fund retirement contributions and those base costs of doing business. And then financial sustainability is, of course, vitally important to everything that we do. So let's talk about the organizational realignment in a little bit more detail. As we have gone through every single position extensively, realigned, created new positions, went ahead and absolved others. The net result is that we are 25.19 FTEs lower in the FY27 budget than we are in the FY26. We do have some positions that we expect we will be able to further absorb in the future through natural attrition, but we will wait for that to happen naturally. Service delivery efficiencies, we are streamlining customer contacts, creating significantly stronger internal communications, and have more consistent and standardized service delivery. And through those efficiencies, we're streamlining workflows, creating fewer fragmented decision points, and having faster implementation and execution. We are already seeing this at work. We're only a few weeks into the official transition, and this is happening. The speed of what we're doing, why we're doing, how we're doing is picking up. Employees are rising to the occasion, and we're excited to sort of watch this grow and transform organically, but still with a lot of intentionality, and we will continue to realize that as we move forward.
Where are these 25 coming from? Because it seems like a big part of the conversation that we're having is a budget strategy that helps us recruit new talent, but yet we are seeing some positions sunset, eliminated, whatever you want to call it. Is there like a theme or a general grouping that these 25 are coming from, or are they scatter plotted?
They are somewhat scatter plotted. There are, one of the analyses that we did was we have a variety of positions that for a variety of reasons have historically been hard to staff. And so if you've had a job open for 2 years and you're not successfully filling it, that's not really the job we need. So in part of this was also creating new jobs that would be more apt to be filled, rather than hanging on to these positions that just were not going to be filled. So they were just taking up space on the org chart and within the budget without actually providing any benefit to the community. There was additional realignment where things like, we took a hard look at the administrative assistants and where they were spread throughout the organization and what their roles were, and really were intentional about reorienting them to customer service professionals and creating them based on whether they were dealing with internal customers primarily or external customers primarily, and then being intentional about where those positions sat. And so in doing that, then there were opportunities to eliminate some vacancies, because instead of having 3 or 4 empty admin positions filtered throughout, by creating a cluster of customer service folks within solid waste, within the Department of Transportation, we could then eliminate those unfilled positions. We made intentional decisions around things like providing city-related surveying services, for example. And so we said we are going to collapse that and rely more on third-party surveyors. We're going to keep a city surveyor, but the folks that were in those roles have been reassigned to other things, and there were some vacancies there that were able to be captured. So it was a variety of positions across the organization, and it was all done through extensive analysis. I think everybody's seen pictures of the war room, the conference room that we turned into the nerve center for this, and we accounted for every person and every position as we did this work.
I have 2 things. My first question is these, excuse me, these 25 FTEs, 25-ish, what is the dollar savings and salary benefits, et cetera?
So the dollar savings was largely then redistributed. So like as an example, if we found that we didn't need 3 administrative assistants, but we did need a department manager for one of the newly created departments, like those 3 funded the 1, but it was a net savings of 2 FTEs.
Right. So there's no dollar savings.
It's basically flat. It basically turned out flat.
And it's across multiple funds.
Yeah, across multiple funds.
And then my second thing is more of a comment. I was talking to a resident the other day who said their interactions with the city are so much better, and they see people out more, and they're very responsive. So
That's great. Thank you.
It's just an anecdote.
Love to hear it.
Show the
Yeah.
efficiencies. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
As I hear you talk about eliminating positions and eliminating administrative assistant positions to add manager positions, I think that is a concern throughout the community and throughout the organization, where we're losing bodies that actually do work to gain a body that oversees people that do work. And definitely at a higher rate. And I just heard you say that the transition is pretty much flat dollar-wise, but doesn't seem that way. I've sat in these work sessions and retreats, and all I hear is money, and it's a part of the game for certain. But it troubles me. It makes me a little cautious, makes me worried about the direction that we're going in and how fast we're going there.
Well,
And
sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
now go ahead.
I was just going to say, to be clear, the other thing that we looked at is like some departments had, say, an administrative assistant and a fiscal technician. And when we looked at the actual workload for both of those positions, they didn't add up to 80 hours a week. We were able to then have one person qualified to do both functions And so that work is still being completed, but it's being done more efficiently because we are optimizing the workloads of the staff that we have. And then I want to be clear that the managers that we are hiring are working managers. These are not people that sit at a desk and wait for somebody to bring them a problem. They are actively managing contracts, managing functions, managing programs. They are doing the work. So they may have some staff that they oversee, but that is not their sole job function, is to oversee other people doing the work. That's not how we operate. I wouldn't say that there's anybody in this organization that operates that way. So we're happy to get you job descriptions, Mayor Pro Tem or any other members of council for any of the positions that are new. They're also all going to be uploaded onto our website once we're done with all of them. The current job descriptions on our website are old. There's a lot that haven't been used in years and years. So all those are going to be wiped out and these new ones will be here. But I'm very confident that you will see through those job descriptions that these are not people pushing paper and not having more than enough to do.
Well, I'd love to have it before it goes to the website.
Okay, we're finalizing the last couple of job descriptions, but yeah, we can get that as a big PDF to council. That's no problem.
Yeah, because I don't even know what we have anymore.
So we did print out, we'll have your copy in your mailbox. So everything, the org charts are in council's hands, and then we'll also be emailing out an electronic copy at the break to all of you. So all of those will be available for you to review at your convenience.
Thank you.
Yep.
Becky, I know last year we did, I believe it was a 7% increase, or was it not? What was the increase in the salaries?
So it was 5%, I think, across the board, and then
5% across the board.
Law enforcement was maybe it was 5%.
It was 5%.
And then the year before that, when we did do an increase, what was the rate there?
7.
Because it also had a merit. It was like a.
I guess my question is this: I know that the city over a number of years, and I'd like to go back to the last 10 years, to determine what were the increases that or the adjustments that we made to the tax rate. I just want to I want everybody to understand that the city over a number of years has made small adjustments about every other year to keep up with the rate of inflation and growth and CIPs and all the things that we're dealing with. I just want to know in the last 2 years, because I know not last year, but the year before, because we held the line last year, but although it was a 5% increase, the year before that, we also did a tax increase. I think it was 2.5%. And I just want to see on the combination between those two on the salary increases. You had 5 last year, and was it 5 or 7 the year before that? What was the total number? And then the ask for this particular year, because I know this is going to be a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like we just continue to make adjustments. And I understand we've been kind of middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to take it to the top end. But it's got some, I do have some serious concerns about the growth rate at 0.79, because we're not anywhere near that. So we're going to have to make some tough decisions on something, whether it be a combination of salaries, CIPs, whatever it is, and what's the most important thing, and then prioritize as to what I believe is going to be the most important thing, because we also have a lot of people out there that are going to be taxed across the board, not just well-to-do people, but people in all neighborhoods that will impact them dramatically.
Yep.
And we have a significant portion of our population that are literally at the poverty level.
Yep.
And so anything that we make, any adjustment that we make, will force some of these folks out of their homes. And I want to be very clear about that. So I think we need to be very intentional as to how we do this, at the same time being fair to you folks, to give you the labor force you need, and to pay the people necessary to get the job done, but at the same time, trying to balance this thing as best we can. Because I see something coming, a little bit of a tsunami coming at me right now, and I just want to prepare myself in this community for what we're about to see, because we're going to have some pretty serious discussions, because I don't believe the county will be going up on their tax rate this year. So just want to make that point very clear.
Understood. So this is the reality of where we are with our workforce right now. Our vacancy rate is 12.4% citywide.
We are at a 20.8% vacancy rate in police and fire, which particularly in police, we do consider a critical staffing gap. Our market position, currently 138 of our employees are making below 60% AMI, and 517 employees are making below 80% AMI, and the corresponding dollar amounts are there. We do feel like we are at risk of service degradation without intervention, particularly where we have critical staffing gaps. The living wage impact, as a recap, that would increase 100% of our employees to 60% AMI, up from 85%. We would then lift 74% of them above 80% AMI, where currently only 47% are higher than that. 746 of our full-time positions, or 65% of our entire workforce, are first responders, and the average first responder pay increase with the living wage would be 19.3%.
Okay, can we go back to this real quick? I mean, I know that the police is at 20.8%. Is in the fire, I would imagine that the fire in my years has always been the lowest turnover rate. It usually averages about 5%, 7%. It may be higher than that. I may be wrong.
It's a little bit higher than that.
But on police, it's always been challenging, and in the last couple of years, it's really become challenging. And then the other challenging department that I've seen over the years has been public services in regards to trash and folks that are doing the hard labor, stormwater and stuff of that nature. Is that still the same? And then that's one question. Then the other question would be is, since Chief Zudem is here, and then you've implemented the policy of giving them a bonus if they will sign up for a certain period of time, has that increased the employment base within the police department?
We've had a few applicants take advantage of the recruitment bonus. What we have heard from a number of people is that's great, they would love to come here, they would love to take advantage of that, but when they look at our base pay that they would then fall back to, until there are guarantees that those numbers will be higher, they can't make the switch.
And that base pay right now is at what?
We're at, is it 52? About just below 52, 51 and change.
51? Okay.
Can you give more detail on this service degradation? Like what services will be degraded?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, most obvious one is police. We have employee burnout. We have a lot of stress on our employees having to work overtime, being at minimal staffing, and there reaches a point where people just say, I need to go somewhere else because this isn't sustainable. So I would say they are hanging in. They are committed. We are certainly responding to calls and all of that, but we're at a point that if we lose many more people, we would struggle to meet minimum staffing levels.
Any others beyond police?
That's the biggest one right now. Recycling and trash, we do have a number of vacancies. We have an applicant who is completing the background process to come in and be the director. We do believe that we need to do some critical analysis of our routes, our routing system, to see if there are efficiencies that we can find that may reduce the number of staff that are needed and be more efficient in how we're collecting. That may minimize the vacancies that we're feeling right now, but until that work is done, that is a strained area as well. Fire, we do lose a number of people. I know we just graduated a class, but I know they're looking at needing to fill up another class, and so it's that constant churn then if you've got new people they're either new to fire or they're new to us, and it takes 6+ months to even get through the academy to then be on a truck. And so even when the numbers don't look particularly high in terms of vacancies, how many people do you actually have that are deployed at a fully operational level? Sometimes that's hidden in there. And like right now, all of those new firefighters, they're here, we're glad to have them. We hope they stay, but they're not maybe fully operating.
Okay. these sound like some pretty core services. I just think it's important for the public to understand when we say service degradation, we're talking about our safety, getting our trash picked up. That's a big deal.
They're definitely, everybody's important. But we understand the vital nature of those departments, certainly. So as we look to balance our needs, we understand that compensation and service levels strain our resources. We have tried to focus on retention over other needs in prior budgets. Again, we certainly don't want to take away from the investments that have been made in fighting for those percentage pay increases in prior years. But it didn't move the needle in terms of where we were with competitiveness in the marketplace. And so it didn't have a notable effect on being able to really close the gaps the way that we would have wanted to. So if we go up 7%, but our neighbors are going up 7%, you're not necessarily doing anything to make yourself more attractive than they are. What ended up happening through those prior budget years, though, is that in focusing on retention, there were a number of core needs that then also got deferred. So equipment and infrastructure replacements were delayed. There has been some inconsistent funding for safety equipment in terms of, hey, not this year, we'll try to do it next year. And sometimes those things just eventually come due. Things expire, things wear out, and you reach a point where you can't kick the can. A big one that we're dealing with right now that we're going to apply for grant funding is SCBA for the fire department. It's a $2.4 million cost. They expire in 27, and right now we don't have a clear funding source for them because the money just isn't there. We're hoping that federal AFG grants may be able to significantly defray that cost, but with everything going on at the federal government, they haven't even opened up that grant cycle. So we're waiting like everybody else, and then if we are unsuccessful in that grant application, those are dollars that we will not have a choice but to spend to keep ourselves in compliance. And I'm fully good news today, I understand. Service impacts, aging equipment does make it difficult for efficiency and response when things go out of service, when things break, and we're using backups, or we need to then work with fleets or work with older things. It does make it more difficult to do the job, and in some cases it can create some higher risks for public safety. The path forward as we see it is that we do need to align our reoccurring revenues with our operational needs and work to fund replacement cycles as consistently as possible. So these are some of the major cost drivers that are within what we are building for the FY27 budget. That $14.2 million is new employee compensation dollars. That is not all employee compensation. Those would be new dollars if we are able to implement the living wage. That is just for general funds. So that is police, fire, certain parts of public works. But then we do have some of the special revenue funds that say pay for solid waste and pay for stormwater. So we are able to tap into some of those other funds to pay for applicable employees. But this is everything that's left that doesn't have an additional revenue source, which is all of police and fire is the major driver of that number. Retirement contributions, the rates are going up with the state, and so we are looking at an additional $774,000 in retirement contributions. Health insurance is going up $3.5 million from this year. That is the equivalent of a penny right there. We went out to bid. We looked at remaining self-insured. We looked at fully insured. We looked at different pools that exist. We turned over every stone, and we do think it'll be before council. We do think it's best to move to a different provider to increase the customer service levels because we have not been happy with our current provider. but going through that process did not result in any good news on the cost side. And this is keeping benefits flat. This is the same co-pays, this is the same co-insurance, the same deductibles. We were hoping that we would be able to make notable progress on that because a prior survey of health insurance benefits showed that we were not particularly competitive in that field compared to our neighbors. But we have just had to draw the line based on how high these renewals came back to say we can't do anything but try to hold the line on not increasing the cost to employees, which will require the city to absorb that entire increase in cost. Otherwise, any pay increase that you do give is essentially gobbled up by an increased expense, and it kind of negates everything you're trying to do on pay. But that is the reality that we are facing with health insurance. Again, we're not alone. The national increases are 20+%. We're at about 14%. So by comparison, I guess you could say it could have been worse. But it certainly doesn't feel that way when you look at the raw dollar impact of what we're going to be dealing with next year. Wave Transit also came and talked to council, and but what they are proposing for FY27, that $516,000 increase, that is sort of a base increase that is not even touching the expansions in service that they want to do. That is just a core cost of the general increase in the cost doing business. And then $400,000 of that is matching the request that they have to the county. They need about $800,000 to essentially add a few buses and break up a few lines to be able to improve on service delivery times. They're not meeting the standards right now that were expected with the current level of funding. So this is just to meet base service level expectations of the current service is what we would need to see an increase in.
I have two questions about WAVE.
Yep.
Do we have any signals from the county about what their WAVE contribution is going to look like in this budget?
They have anticipated that they would be willing to match the $400,000 request. They would support that. They've signaled that they don't like the additional increase, so the extra $116,000 out of that total. So I think there's going to be pressure on WAVE to reduce that number from the county. It's not based on anything that I've heard besides they don't like it.
So their current contribution level is about $50,000. Is that right?
No, it's 1.2 million and ours is about 1.9.
Okay, I don't know where I got that number from. Okay, and then my second question is, does WAVE just purchase fuel at the market rate, or do they have some sort of...
Do you know the answer to that, Celeste?
Well, first of all, they've converted most of their fleet to compressed natural gas, so that's going to be something that most of us don't have any idea what the market rate on that is. And I imagine that they have contracts with bulk providers.
They do. Yeah. I see some nods. Thank you.
We are, like all of us probably in our personal lives, seeing utility rate increases. We expect across all departments supported by the general fund, $535,000 just to pay the light, water, and gas bills next year. We're underfunded in our current budget based on the actual bills that we're seeing, so we're having to take from other places and skim back just to make sure that the water doesn't get turned off. So this is just trying to cover what we expect for next year. And then $1.4 million is kind of a general other. We have increases in insurance premiums, and then some IT replacement and fleet replacements and contracts. Again, keeping up with those contract increases, we are experiencing additional increases there. So a lot of budget pressures on things that it's difficult to find a way to move the math in a positive way. Additional requests, we are, full disclosure, we are very much still going through the vetting process of the departmental requests that we have received. We've had initial meetings with every department. We've carved a few things, but some of the things that we are facing is they're good requests, and that is a challenge. So as an example, a cybersecurity officer, that's something that we do not presently have. We think that it is very beneficial to have somebody with that specialized expertise, given the nature of the world today and trying to protect ourselves. We are finding that we really need to be providing a higher level of IT support to public safety than has been provided in the past. If you think about the job that they do, it is IT intensive, it is tech intensive. There's a lot of specialized programs and equipment that allow them to run and do their day-to-day. And so having two staff that are able to work full-time from that department would be very beneficial. Right now, they're queued in with just the regular ticket system, and we have started sending people down to spend some of their hours down there to try to relieve some of the immediate pressure. But that is just almost like a help desk day-to-day, what the officers need, not necessarily some of the more advanced infrastructure that needs consistent time and attention in that department. We have another $500,000 in deferred core operating needs that we can get into the details of what those are if you're curious. An additional $1.6 million in fire and police safety equipment, and then $500,000 just for repair and maintenance. So again, we expect some of these things will tweak down, but some of these we do view as valid requests that are worthy of serious consideration within next year's budget.
I am curious about, go ahead, Kevin.
For cybersecurity officer, aren't we currently paying a vendor to manage our cybersecurity needs?
Yes.
Yes.
So are we gonna get rid of that vendor to get this cybersecurity officer, or are we trying to have both?
This would be in addition to. Can you speak to it, Mary?
Yeah, a little bit. So this would enable us to, so right now our contract is, as we mentioned, is all of the cybersecurity. So it's not just, it's employee training, it's the back stuff that no one really sees, but we do. And that's managed in-house in terms of that contract, and some of the other work is done in-house currently. This kind of heightens it a little bit given some of where we are and what we're doing. We would enable us to do more in-house training, which we need to do, create some more mandatory programs. It was one of the identified needs that we had when we went through the analysis a little bit ago. It is a standard practice, so it wouldn't do away with the contract, because the contract's bigger. That actually does other things to help protect us, but this would help. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying to say it without getting into the...
There was an analysis done, yes, and having a dedicated cybersecurity officer was identified as a gap in our current approach.
Yeah, right now it's part of what we do, but it's scattered throughout the department in some different ways with different positions, and so this would enable us to put it one person. There's a standard practice. If you look at most places have a security officer, and so it enables us to do that, but it wouldn't get away with the contract.
In other organizations, and it's been a while since I've worked in information security, but I've often seen this called an information security officer versus a cybersecurity officer. Is this?
I mean, we have a job description we've been working through, so we can look at that, and I don't know if we'll call it a cybersecurity or just security or a chief security officer.
And the reason that I say that is because some of the implications around information security are bigger than
it's not
like
just
cyber.
Yeah.
Right.
I think information would make more sense based on what you're saying.
And the reason I want to bring that up is one, I want to understand this position, but two, historically when I've worked in organizations that have identified a CISO, there's a layer of internal responsibility and external responsibility that I don't think is appropriate for a contractor. And so I would consider moving in that direction.
Yeah, and that's the hybrid. And you'll have that job description when we
Yeah.
upload the new one, so.
I wanted to ask about deferred core operating needs. I would like some detail there because when I first read that, I thought it was going to be related to CIP, but I see that's much later in the presentation.
No, it is separate. So those are identified as ballistic vest upgrades. So ballistic vests expire and need replacing. They're not guaranteed or certified after a certain number of years, and the vests have become more expensive. And so so this isn't buying more. This is just being able to fund the next batch. Fleet parts and sublet and fireboat maintenance enhancements, so that's $144,000. So that is just being able to cover the cost of the parts in fleet that we are anticipating or that we experience. That's routine maintenance, that's repairs, that's everything related to fleet. So they are running well over budget with what we're seeing from actual experience with preventative maintenance as well as repairs.
So this 499 is all public safety deferred.
So fleet is going to be some public safety, but also general fleet. So your other vehicles. We also have Laura, operational equipment lifecycle increase.
So we have various equipment in fire, and we tried to get them in a replacement cycle, and some of this is an inflation that we haven't caught up, and some of it is also equipment that was never in the replacement cycle, and so we're trying to catch up to all of the equipment that they have.
Yeah, and it is the
That's not.
no, that's a different one.
Ready here.
Yeah, and then also other PPE replacement increases is $191,000.
And those are set plans already, we're just catching up with what they need and the price inflation.
Okay, thank you.
So, Commissioner Santaguida, you had asked before about kind of the dollar amount. When we look at the FY27 base and then the proposed budgets, again, we do expect to ratchet this down a little bit, but kind of looking at where we are today. And this does include the living wage in these dollar amounts, but the anticipated expenditures compared to anticipated revenues creates a gap of $20.3 million, which is the equivalent of 5.75 cents. Separate from that is the CIP funding. At council's second work session, we talked to you about CIP and the gaps in funding compared to being able to complete what we deem to be some of the essential projects, bridge improvements, some things that were really kind of not optional, and then some of the other projects that are also in the current CIP. The direction that we got from council at that time was at least some level of support to look at what we had recommended for funding for that, which was sort of that middle figure where we believed that we can do it for complete all those projects for $50.2 million. And that does include a $13.3 million grant award. That is the grant for the bulkheads that we are currently pursuing. We have over 100 letters of support from the community for that grant application right now, which is wonderful. We will take all that we can get, so we would encourage people to keep them coming. But if we are able to be successful in that grant, that is very significant in being able to get all these projects funded. If not, it does create a different scenario. We won't know for a little while. But with that, the prior conversation was that we believed we could do all of that for 0.61 cents per hundred. We have continued to revise those project estimates and have actually found some cost savings where we believe that now we can deliver the same projects for 0.51 cents. So something moving in a positive direction. So that continues to be our recommendation related to CIP funding. But if that feels like a new number to you, it's because it was previously 0.61. But now we would be asking for less to be dedicated to CIP, but still delivering the same amount of projects. If we are unsuccessful with that grant for the bulkheads, we would come back and revisit what to do at that time, because that funding would not be included in the 0.51. But we continue to recommend that to complete those initiatives. As a reminder, one of the initiatives that we are looking at for future CIP, so the CIP that will start in FY30, is development of the property that was recently acquired for park development. We would anticipate that construction would be beginning in FY30, and so we are not anticipating needing to find construction dollars for that park in the current round of CIP, but that 0.51 does include sufficient funding to design the park. So we actually found more than a lower number below 0.51. But when we then said, well, hey, we know we need to move forward with design to keep ourselves on schedule with those grant commitments. So adding that in was what brought us to the 0.51. So that would make us comfortable that we would be able to deliver on those timelines and have identified funding for the park design in the current CIP.
On the design and that aspect of it, are we doing this in partnership with the county in regards to the paying for the park?
No, the county explicitly said they wanted zero participation in construction costs.
Okay, so that all falls on us.
It all falls on us.
Maintenance.
And maintenance. So we will happily have their name on the sign as far as helping us to have acquired the property, but the rest of it is ours. And we are the sole owners on the deed that reflects that.
We'll have some public input, obviously, some of the community decides what they would do.
Significantly, staff is gearing up to start a year-long input process to have extensive community engagement on what they would like to see in the park to make sure that we are responsive to their wants. That will also give opportunity for the endowment's assessment of assets countywide to come back. That may be an additional data point to help inform what goes into the park. If the endowment is open to it, we would love to revisit a conversation about sharing in construction costs, but that would be years down the road. They initially signaled that it would be on us, but it never hurts to ask.
You may need to turn that park into a zoo so we can generate some revenue.
Zoos are expensive. So when we look at then tax adjustments, when you add up everything that's been identified in the general fund, which again, we do expect to tweak back a little bit, but just for the purposes of today's discussion, kind of the all-in impact of everything that we've gone over today, looking at the general fund of needing the 20+ million to do everything that we're talking about, and then the capital improvement program, that does bring a total tax adjustment to 6.26 cents per hundred. I am in no way recommending that today. This is just for the purposes of discussion and understanding real dollar needs, and then what the related impacts are of those needs, so that you can start to determine where you fall on that spectrum in terms of capacity, appetite, interest to move forward in a particular way. So all in is 6.26. We then ran a few what we call reduction scenarios. So if council said 6.26 is a bridge too far, but we can be comfortable at 6. We would anticipate still being able to fund living wage and health insurance, and many of the deferred core needs. Obviously, we would then be looking for
about $900,000 in cuts from what has been proposed in the budget. And then it scales down from there. So if it was 5 cents, we still believe we could do living wage, of course, fund health insurance. We would then need to find, what would that be? 3.5 million dollars less than scenario one. So cutting an entire penny off the 3.5 million down to 4 cents, we would then be looking at needing to find many millions of dollars. The living wage implementation would simply not be feasible under that scenario. That's not something that I feel like I could recommend, given the realities of the health insurance renewal and the realities of the base increases and costs that we're seeing in other lines that can't be ignored. We can go on and on. These were the 4 that we ran. We can keep going. If you said no tax increase, we can obviously run that. I honestly don't see a scenario where there isn't a tax increase as part of FY27 in some way, shape, or form, even if we held employee wages completely flat. Our needs are simply higher than our expected revenues.
Thanks for presenting this. When we had our budget work session in January, you alluded to a phased approach to the living wage, and I think I asked to have a workup of what that would look like. Have you done that, and how does that play into this?
We were running that. If you are at 4 cents, I think we managed to slide in maybe 40% of that living wage, so you'd be less than half of the implementation, and then anything below 4 cents would just be less and less and less.
So it would be feasible to start the implementation, just not complete it.
Correct, but you would be at what would it be? Maybe an 8%, 8-ish% across the board increase, as opposed to the 19 that is the needle mover.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, because I know this is something that y'all are working up, but I think it would be interesting to look at what does a phased implementation look like if we start with those core needs that we talked about in earlier slides. What does it look like to phase that out? What does it look like to start it more across the board? I think just looking at these numbers, I think that has to be something that we consider and that we need more details on before we can make any decisions.
Sure, yeah, and certainly not looking for any decisions from council today. I would then say council would then need to be prepared for the tax increase then 2 years in a row. So if you were looking at, say, 4 cents this year to do 40%, you'd be then looking at 2.5 cents next year to fund the rest of the living wage.
But then it's probably even another increase on top of it because it goes up year over year. Sure. So trying to keep pace with the market, we're usually out of market the minute we implement. That's been our challenge all along.
It's always going to be a challenge.
It is always, but yeah.
So sure, but I'm not saying that I'm opposed to the living wage and considering that. I want to understand what all of the options are.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think it's as black and white as we do it or we don't do it. Yeah, I think there's some gray area there, and I want to understand what those scenarios look like.
Yeah, I agree with Cassidy, and also I have a question about the health insurance. Didn't we just change health insurance providers a year ago or 2 years ago? For the ones of you that were here, Mary?
No, we've had UMR for a number of years. So, are you talking about changing the rates, Mayor Pro Tem?
No, I thought we changed the insurance provider.
He's talking about the 457. The 457 has changed, but health insurance has not changed.
Okay.
2018 sounds like was how long we've had UMR.
We did change our broker.
The broker changed. That might be what you're thinking of, but the
I knew something
yeah,
changed.
Yeah, the broker at 457.
So the broker might be what you're thinking of, but that didn't change the core provider. So looking at the implications of these tax rates, this is always helpful for me of hearing the sense of what does it actually do to a property owner. So we looked at median value of a single family residential property in Wilmington is $445,000 based on the FY26 revaluation. So the 6.26 cents would equate to an annual increase of $279 for that property owner, which equates to a $23 a month increase. It then scales down 6 cents, $22 a month, 5 cents, $19 a month, 4 cents, $15 a month. So that is helpful in terms of bottom line and hit to the pocketbook. We do also have at the back of this, if council is interested in it, we have for like a $250,000 value property, which would be some of our lowest income residents in Wilmington, and then also an $800,000 property, just to provide that spectrum to understand that tax rates obviously impact everybody differently depending on the valuation of the property that they're in.
Where is that? That's in this?
That is, we had it at the back. Here you go. So this is for $250,000 single family residential. The 6.26 is $13 a month or $157 a year. 4 cents is $8 a month.
Can you send those slides to us?
Happy to. And then $800,000 house, 6.26 cents. It's $42 a month, $500 a year. Down to 4 cents is $320 a year, $27 a month. Yes, happy to provide those.
All of these proposals, I'm looking at page 25, all of these proposals include the CIP number that you gave us earlier. Okay, I just want to highlight that, because it sort of seems like today our focus is on the living wage adjustment and some other maybe deferred operational costs. But I want to highlight that you all have successfully incorporated like our vision for what CIP needs to be.
Yes.
And not just, I just don't want us to forget that like that was a pretty important decision that we made and a pretty big investment that we're going to make in this community, and we are moving in that direction, even though it's not a major topic today. Like we're over that hill.
Very much so, and I appreciate that. The other thing that this takes into account is that slowed natural revenue growth, where we're trying to absorb those appeal losses. We're trying to absorb that lost revenue that is coming from appeal losses to be able to cover the cost, where when you set the tax rate last year, it was based on a certain valuation, and we are now kind of lower than expected there because of those appeal losses. So we're absorbing that. We're correcting the CIP, getting the sufficient funding for that. And so, yes, when you start carving out, and any communication that we have, like in the budget presentation, we'll hit that really hard as far as this is not just going to the general fund. This is being parsed out for these specific projects and these specific initiatives that help deliver on council's other initiatives and goals in those areas.
So the only growth that we have, that I'm looking at right now, is sales tax revenue at 2.5%.
A little bit of
and
sales
a growth
tax,
rate
yeah.
of 0.79.
That's correct.
That's it.
Yep.
Nothing else.
That's it. So because like investment earnings is actually down because interest rates
So
have
the
gone
developments
down.
that are taking place that are under construction, do we have a percentage of where we are, or I guess what we've approved, what's underway, what's been permitted by the county and us, and where are we in that adjustment? Because you're hearing all the time, well, you've got all these apartments, all this stuff that's been built, why aren't you guys generating more revenue? And we have generated more revenue, but I just want to know in that period where before it's fully taxable and it's partially taxable, where are we with it? Do we know?
So the question that we have out to the county right now is, we're able to see the changes in valuation from year to year, but we have asked them to provide for us a 10-year history of
how much of that is new development that has come online that is making up those valuations. They said it'll take them a couple weeks to parse that out, but they are working on that for us. I would caution looking to use building permit valuations because inevitably it seems like those never fully materialize. So somebody can go get a building permit for $100 million and then never build it. Or maybe they do build it and when it's assessed, it's $75 million instead of 100. So those are swags that never seem to correlate to actual valuations from what I've seen.
Then ABC revenue, is that going to be flat or going up? You know?
It's essentially, might have been up maybe 1%, but it's not that significant in dollars.
Parking revenues?
So parking revenues are up a little bit, but restricted for some of their usage, or in terms of where we would want to make sure that we were dedicating them. It was for applicable related things. Lost my train of thought. I don't remember. In intergovernmental revenues, so Powell bill, it has gone up a little bit, but intergovernmental across the state is continuing to go down typically year over year. So we're having to make that up from our other revenue sources. So yeah, there's not good levers besides property
the
tax.
other question I have is on core services, well, we're picking up some of the service delivery that maybe should be picked up by other governments based on what they're receiving. Can you parse that out to say if we're taking care of, let's just say, more homeless services, and we have a certain locked-in amount of money that we're getting in, but the vast majority of that money that's coming in is supposed to be helping in those endeavors is coming in from the state, or more money that goes toward public health. How much, what's that percentage look like? Because if we're picking up more services in the social arena that we're not built for, that other governments are built for, but they're not taking that responsibility, we're looking at core services and paying our employees, and yet we're taking on more challenges outside of the realm of what we're supposed to be doing, just like they're looking at what are they supposed to be doing.
I think one of the great examples of that is the social workers. So that is built into this budget. That is $500,000 in new money that we are needing to find to put towards what we think is a very important, needed initiative, both for the community, assist our police department. There's so many positive attributes to it, but to need for social workers in Wilmington, that's because those populations are here, and the need is here. That is not a cost that is being shared by anybody. That's being absorbed completely by us.
I have two questions. Because I think in a lot of these cases when there's high attrition in the public safety especially, that is maybe hopefully quantifiable. I mean, is there any way to look at what the result of bumping up the salaries would be on the attrition? Because attrition, especially in those positions, is super expensive. So is there any way to quantify that?
Not having done it here, right? We would certainly be able to track it. I will say the community that I was in before, we implemented a similar initiative. We had similar staffing issues. We didn't get quite fully staffed, but we were close to fully staffed, and we did not have a voluntary resignation or somebody leaving of their, for their own reasons, basically quitting to go find another job for 18 months. So it held. Now, certainly that's paired with, and again, good working environment, good opportunities, but we very much feel like we can provide that in our police department. We do think that there are a lot of people in law enforcement who are watching to see what we're going to do.
I'm optimistic enough that if we can move this needle to this extent, that we will start to see significant lateral transfer applications. We hadn't seen them in Matthews in 6 years until we implemented ours, and then they were coming in. They were in North Carolina. They were sworn. They had years of experience because and then they can hit the ground. They can hit the street without having to go through BLET. They need some weeks with an FTO. Make them. We've got to learn our streets and things like that, but. Their ability to work at a fully functioning level is also much faster. So I have asked the police department, they filled a BLET class that just started recently, but let's pause on trying to fill the one for this fall to see if we're able to implement this. What is the result? Because if we do get the influx of certified police officers that we are hoping to see out of this, we don't want the seats, so to speak, to be already filled with individuals that are waiting to start BLET. You're 16 plus months then from that person having graduated and even being out on the street versus get them through background, make sure they're the kind of officer that we want. And to be clear, this doesn't lower our standards. Like, just because you're certified doesn't mean we're gonna hire you. You still need to meet the standards that we're looking for, the personality that we're looking for. The nice thing too about certified officers is they have a track record.
Yeah.
And so if we're doing our due diligence through the background process, we can also better understand who are they as an officer, and is this the kind of officer that we want working for us? And sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay. They can stay where they are, go find another job somewhere else. As opposed to a green officer with no experience, you do your very best, right? But until they start getting out on the street, that's when they start to build that track record. So being able to hire certifieds are attractive for a number of reasons. We just don't have a lot of pull right now to be able to entice them to come our way.
What does the city save in onboarding a certified officer versus a brand new?
I mean, we're paying them as an employee, so we will hire them before BLET starts at a pretty low rate of pay. It's like maybe $15-20 an hour or something like that. But then when they're BLET, they're fully salaried. They're on our health insurance, but they're sitting in class. So we're
how long? Like, I'm looking for a dollar amount, an approximate dollar amount.
BLET is 6 months, about 6 months. So you would be looking at 25,000 plus benefits, plus all the time that they're in FTO. So you're probably closer to 9 months to a year before they're off on their own. So that would be basically a full year salary plus benefits.
Plus the costs of the training facilities and the trainers and all the
things.
Yeah.
All the things.
Mary, somebody said something about on this living wage. So if we implement it, or whenever we implement it, you're still looking at making adjustments every year to keep up with it.
What we would recommend we do then is every year we are looking at AMI, because that is reestablished every year for this area, and then we use that as the litmus test. Sometimes AMI goes down, sometimes it stays flat. So in those years, we wouldn't be looking for an automatic change to the pay scales, but in the years that AMI went up 1%, 2%, whatever, we would then try to move the scale accordingly. So you're always matching AMI at that lowest level, scaling up in your pay scales. So it would slowly move with AMI. That's essentially your new cost of living conversation, instead of looking at CPI. So that's your cost of living conversation. And then depending on those percentages, if say the AMI only moved 1%, you try to give 3% a year-ish in any given year. So then maybe you're at a 2% merit pool. So then you can be giving increases also based on performance, because if you don't also then move people through the pay scale into the pay scale, you end up with compression, because you then have people with years of experience just sitting at the bottom, not moving, which then makes it very hard to bring in new hires, because they're all kind of globbed together, and somebody saying, well, I've been here 3 years, why am I making the same amount of money as somebody who just got hired?
Or less.
Or less. Yeah.
And we haven't
sorry, and we haven't been able, sorry, and Mayor, to that point, it is keeping up with the market, but we haven't been able to do merits in several years. And so by going to the model that the city manager talks about, it would enable us to go back and do merits, which is important. I think it's been 3 years now. I think it was 2 years, 25. And even that was a modest merit. And so that's something we've heard from employees in terms of rewarding performance, especially when we're looking for high performers. So getting into this model would enable us to go back to that because we would just be looking at AMI.
And no, I appreciate that. And we have had employees ask, well, what about merit?
Yeah.
And my response was like, I hear you, but we've got to invest in getting the pay scales where we want and need them first. And then that conversation starts next year. It's just too expensive to even contemplate trying to do both in a single year.
My second question was about tax abatement regarding some of the lower income folks that own their own home, which I worked with for 15 years. Tell us about the tax abatement programs. What options are available to them?
Martha, are you able to speak to the tax? So typically those are county programs. If you can come to a mic. I know they exist. I don't know the exact ones in New Hanover County. They have similar programs in Mecklenburg County.
I would want to follow up just to make sure.
Okay.
Sure, that's fine.
If I can get that information and follow up with you, I don't want to misspeak, but there are various programs that the county has. I just want to make sure that I get the accurate information.
Can you send that to all of us?
Yes.
And that's something I would want to make sure we message really well, because some people don't even know about it that would qualify, would really make a big difference. I mean, to some folks that I used to work with, $8 a month is actually a lot.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
thanks.
So this is really just wrapping up in terms of sort of just understanding everything that we are trying to balance here, and understanding that it does create, it's a difficult scenario, certainly. But understanding kind of the realities of where we are. One of my commitments to you as your manager, and I'm not going to ever cover up the realities of what it costs to do things, and we very much want to be fiscally conservative. We want to be responsible, but the realities of what it costs to provide services and have qualified, competent staff doing the work that's necessary, it's very, very expensive, and it is getting more expensive every year. And so this is really just where we are right now in the budget process. These are the challenges that we're sitting in meetings talking about and putting together, and reworking the revenues and some of these estimates to make sure that they're accurate. But it is creating a scenario of significant challenge of where do we want to land as an organization? What is our capacity to afford these things, or our desire to afford these things? And if we don't feel like we can afford all of them, then what are the things that we're willing to forego on, either permanently or for another year, but then understanding the difficulty then in next year's budget conversation when we're all sitting around this table, then saying, hey, remember we didn't do X. Well, now we have to. And what other challenges may be associated with that budget that we do not yet know. So that is really where we are. And we will continue to refine things, but certainly any early feedback from you all, any general feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, it is helpful for us to hear it. If you don't have any to provide today because you're just absorbing everything, we understand that too, but certainly open to whatever direction, insight you all are willing to share as we continue to shape what we bring to you in early May.
Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm not voting for this 6.25, and I'm gonna really have to get into some of the weeds on this, because this is a pretty significant sea change. I mean, I think we've always made an adjustment about 2.5% or 2.5% or something like that. That's the highest I think I've ever remembered here, and we usually have done it every other year. And I know this is a significant change in regards to philosophy, in regards to pay and all that. And obviously we're a city, and everybody uses our services every day, and it's not the people across the river, it's the people that are living at the beaches that come over that bridge every day that use our services. Everybody uses city services, and when you superimpose on top of the folks that are not paying taxes, the universities, the hospitals, the community colleges, government, churches, there's a significant amount of folks that are not paying to be part of the city. So you extract all of that, and then you're also being whacked with the sales tax revenue at only 26 cents, where the majority is going to the county, and because they can do that based on state statute. If we did it on population, we'd have a much better adjustment, but we're not going to get that. And at the same time, I have to be concerned about the folks that live here. So I'm trying to find that balance.
Sure.
And at the same time, trying to keep up with the CIP, maintain our parks and our roads and all the other things that make our city great. Also taking into consideration in the last 2 years that we have made adjustments to the employment base here for our employees, and we value them. And I believe that they deserve an adjustment also. But I'm kind of falling into the camp of if we do this in maybe 2 or 3 phases. But that's going to be a hard thing for us to swallow. This is a pretty significant increase overall. And I'm not saying it's not needed, and I understand that the pressures that we are under now, because now we're starting to really see the implications of the 2010 decision for cities not to be able to do annexation. And now as a city, we're pretty much locked in geographically, and people are living on the edges of our city and using our services every single day. And I've always made this comment to a lot of my beach mayors. Everybody that goes to any one of those beaches has got to drive to the city of Wilmington to get there. And so they're using city services, police, fire, you name it. And I think we did a study years ago when Chief Evangelist was here that 52% of the traffic accidents are not citizens of Wilmington, and I don't know what that number is today. I'm sure it's about the same, if not higher. So we're taking on a lot of responsibility for a lot of folks that are coming in here every single day, and yet we're also hamstrung as to what we're able to get back in revenues. So I want to really delve into this thing and maybe talk to some of you guys about how you feel about it, but it's tough. It's going to be a tough budget, and I know it's going to be ongoing as the pressures built around us, and this area and this region continues to grow, because we are the epicenter of commerce in our communities. Most of your jobs are located in the incorporated city limits, and so we're going to continue to deal with that. Plus, we had 4.3 million people visiting New Hanover County, of which most of them came to the city of Wilmington. So you have that pressure that's coming into us. So it's going to be a challenge.
Sure.
And I know we're going to take this very seriously, because people are concerned. But we're also being asked to take on more responsibility as a community, and that's also got pressures. And what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, and what we can do, and what are the responsibilities that we really should be adhering to, and really start having serious conversations with others that maybe need to be taking more responsibility in certain ways. And I'm not saying there's any one particular government or nonprofit, but we need to really think through some of these things. Because it seems like everybody has kind of like walked away from some things and say, city, you guys take it on. And we can't do but so much. And I will say we've always punched above our weight, always. And we've demonstrated that we've done a lot of great things here, but it's challenging now as to what we're limited, as to what we can and cannot do. So.
I want to chime in. I got a comment and I got a question. I'm gonna ask my question first. And at the last budget work session, I asked how many police officers live in the city limits. But now I'm going to ask, what percentage of staff lives in the city of Wilmington? And if we can't spout that number off at the top of our head right now, you can send it to me later. But I think that's a pretty good question. As the mayor talks about, a lot of people do. They come into our community, they use our services, and they leave. And we got a good bit of employees who come here and make good money and leave every day. So I just want to get a percentage of how many of our employees actually live within the city limits.
Sure, we're happy to get that.
I have a couple questions about our revenue. Any of our enterprise funds, although those are kind of like, don't really generate significant profit, right?
Correct.
Okay. The other question is, what about the stormwater fees we collect? Do they cover the costs that they are supposed to cover?
So they cover the costs, yes, but everything is restricted in terms of we can use it for stormwater related functions, staff that is doing stormwater related work. So like as an example, these proposed increases to wages, they've been applied to the staff that are paid for out of the stormwater fund. They've been applied to the staff that are paid for out of the solid waste fee. And so those funds are absorbing those increases. And then what's left is then what we're talking about with the general fund.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful.
So yeah, we carved as many, and through the realignment, we also have looked at additional staff that may be able to at least be partially funded through some of these funds as their work is changing. So we've tried to push as much to the special revenue funds as possible.
Would we need to raise those rates to cover this?
No, they've been able to absorb it. We've done all that analysis.
Okay. And my only other comment is when you bring us news like this, you need to give us something stronger than coffee.
We can meet somewhere at 5 o'clock if you need to.
I've been giving my feedback as we go. I guess the only additional thing I will say is I appreciated seeing in the capital projects the application for the 13.3 million for the bulkhead project. I'm sure you all are doing this, but I just want to say explicitly, like, I encourage pursuing other methods of funding some of these needs.
Yes.
And wherever we can lend support or I can lend support, like, let me know, because I think it's important that we pursue all avenues of funding and not just look at property tax as the only way that we can support the needs of our city.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I have some thoughts on our living wage model, and I hate to revisit a conversation that I know you all have thought through pretty well and are now asking us basically for a thumbs up or a thumbs down on. But you had sort of indicated that there was going to be a ceiling on a compensation level that would not necessarily see the same amount of increase in their compensation, as part of this. And I don't have the background or training to really understand, without further explanation from you all, the compression dynamics here. And so I think that's actually the information I'm probably asking for right now, is to better understand compression and whether or not we can lower that ceiling such that we can still make a difference for the people who are making less than area median income without compensating people who are already, as Kevin alluded to, making a lot of money and taking it outside of the community.
We can definitely get you that information. I'd say in a nutshell, your biggest pinch point is at the $75,000 mark, where if somebody is making $75,000 and they get essentially a 19% pay increase, if you then don't give the people above them an increase, you will have them leapfrogging somebody, so now they're making more than their supervisor in some cases, and then you have that compression then throughout the rest of those upper pay scales, and so sorry, lost my train of thought. The other issue that you have with it is that there's actually very few employees who are in those upper pay scales.
Certainly every dollar counts and I get it, but if you're looking to like move the needle in a meaningful way, off of that $14.4 million implementation cost, the bulk of your dollars are already going to the people who are making less than $75,000 a year, because that's the vast majority of our workforce. And so we can certainly run the numbers however you wanted them, but your net savings is going to be fairly nominal if you scale that down, because that's just not what most people are making. Like you see the majority of the people in the organization sitting in this room who are making that kind of good money. So we can run it, but if you that big pinch point at the 75 is where you then start to have people jump, and wherever you cut it off, you may then see some of that people jumping above. So we're happy to get you the numbers, but the cutoff was that nobody in the organization would receive more than $15,000. A $75,000 earner making a 19% increase is just a hair below that, but then it caps everybody above that to be getting no more than $15,000.
And we shrunk the range.
That's the key, flipping the 47 to the 74.
Yeah.
And we shrunk the range. So the higher ranges used to, sorry. We also, part of the living wage proposal was the higher, and HR can correct me a little bit on numbers, but the higher ranges used to have more capacity, so they were wider ranges, if that makes sense. Greater earning potential. So one of the things we did was actually shrink that as well, to be in line with the rest of the organization. So
Like salary ranges for when you advertise a position?
Yeah, so any, the higher, anything over 75, some of those salary ranges were wider, because back in the day it was easy, so we could hire within a greater area in terms of the range, if I'm making any sense. We've narrowed that to be in line with the rest of the organization, which also helps us create savings, but it does shift as well.
So it caps the
earning potential at the top.
The ultimate earning potential of our highest earners. It caps it lower than it would if we had kept those ranges as wide as they normally were. Because when we think about recruitment, what we're advertising is the bottom of the range to about midpoint. And so that's really how we're trying to get people in the door. So we want to raise the minimums because that's how you get more qualified people and higher quality people, but they don't need this vast high number on the far end to still be earning a competitive wage for that level of position. And so we try to bring those into alignment and cap it so it over time then people can't exceed far into that high end. They're going to be in alignment with everybody else.
And do you budget positions at the midpoint?
We budget positions at minimum.
At minimum.
Yeah. So anytime you're then negotiating and bringing somebody in over minimum, you are then kind of banking on carrying some level of vacancy in the organization to be able to absorb it.
And then compression is also about that. Someone mentioned earlier, I think Becky, the time and position. So if we do less at the upper end, for those that are here now, all it's going to do is also hinder us in terms of hiring and bringing staff in, because you'll have people who are sitting and have been with the organization for long tenured, who may not even be at some of the higher levels, but are making over the 80,000 or whatever that number is, and so they're limited, and so we're bringing new people in higher than them. So that's another form of leapfrogging or compression as well. So time and position too. And so this, moving everybody helps with that in terms of our ability to bring people in.
But we can get a list of, and we would just take names off of it, of like current pay rate, and then if implemented, what the pay rate would move to.
Yeah, and I normally would not want to be poking around in people's salary data, but since this is the kind of change that we're doing.
It's valid, but we can also then like color block off like the ones where like, hey, they're below 60% AMI, and it shows all of like there's 135 of them, right? So yeah, we can get that to you so that you can see, and then it shows
it would also show that maximum increase for those other positions.
Okay.
That would then show
Who's
that.
gonna
So-
be on, who's gonna be point for that, Mary?
So HR will need to run it, and then we'll jazz it up with the colors and the explanations, and we'll be emailing all this stuff to you guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
While you're running scenarios, I was wondering, you said of the 14.2 million, a majority of it is the public safety.
Mhm.
So I just wondered what, approximately the majority of it was. Is it like 60%? Is it 80% of that?
65%.
Okay.
So 65% of our
From the
workforce are
other-
first responders.
Okay, so that also makes up the dollar amount.
Mhm.
And the public works, the one that we're also having trouble filling vacancies. Is that percentage in here somewhere?
Services, trash, fire, trash.
They're
We've included
so
some of those frontline
so
workers.
certain employees. So it wouldn't be trash,
No.
but like certain certain public works employees who get called out for emergencies and things like that are included in the first responders because they fit that definition. But trash and whatnot, we don't have that percentage in terms of the percentage of the workforce. But remember, trash is paid for outside of the general fund.
Becca, do you have on the CIP, the half a cent, do you have a breakdown of the different things?
The projects?
Yeah.
Yep.
Has that changed since we looked at it last time?
No.
Okay.
But the dollar amounts have just a little bit. Oh, did we put the CIP stuff in the end?
I put it on the file, the folder this year.
Can we find it?
Separate presentation.
We have a few slides that show
Can we
the.
take a break while you all
Of
find that?
course, yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Call the meeting back to order. Salt?
Thank you.
Where's yours?
Mayor.
Yes, I'm sorry, we have to have a roll call. Madam Clerk, will you please do the roll call for the record?
Thank you, sir, no problem. Mayor Pro Tem Spears, are you on?
I'm here.
Councilmember Joyner?
Here.
Councilmember Andrews? Here. Councilmember Lau?
Here.
Councilmember Cassidy?
Here.
Councilmember Chakima?
Here.
And Mayor Zappa, thank
Here.
you, appreciate it.
Count for it.
Okay, we had a question about the capital projects. These are the projects that you saw last time that we had split up into ones that were related to bridges, structural improvements that were needed, and then some other projects that we are either in the process of completing or we are completing design on. The total budget for those is 52.13 million, and so we had a little bit of a deficit to be able to afford those. Let me get to, it's at the end, right? So this was where we had landed before we added in the dollars for design of the park property. But if you wanted to see the actual list, it is there on the screen.
Can you go to the unfunded screen?
Whoops, sorry, funding challenges. So this shows the difference between the cost of these projects and then the current available budgets, which left the delta of 23 million, and that's what we're trying to close.
Why is Front Street Bridge highlighted again?
So Front Street Bridge change, sorry. So I'll also introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. My name is Justin Carter. I'm the director of our design and construction group. Front Street Bridge is highlighted because it's one of the ones we reduced. So last time you saw it, it was probably north of $600,000. We've put in the new bid that was awarded. What is also not reflected there that will hopefully put us in the positive is an ILA that will become before you the April 7th meeting. Will actually put us in the positive. But it's highlighted because it was one of the ones that was a major change from what we showed you before.
Thank you.
And the trail along Greenville Loop up toward Seagate area, that one is funded, that one's underway.
Yes, sir.
All the way through to the river to Steep Bikeway?
Yes, sir. Greenville Loop Phase 3. Yes. Yep.
Okay. So the ones out of the transportation bond that was done in 2014, the only, is the Pine Grove,
Yes.
redone there with light, although we purchased all the right of way. And then the roundabout at Greenville Loop?
Yes, sir. Both those projects, and then Car Ave Trail as well. Although we did get some assistance with funding through the WMPO through the grant.
The other thing I do want to say, just for the record, not to confuse the issue, but a lot of these projects have been referred to as the 2014 bond projects. And we heard recently in the community somebody saying, well, you know, they haven't spent all their bond money. And I want to be very clear, we have more than spent all of the bond money. We just weren't able to complete all of the identified projects that the city had hoped to complete with that bond money. We weren't able to complete all of them before we ran out of bond money. So all the bond money is spent and out the door. This is trying to then make good on the promises to the community for specific projects to be delivered. And we need more money in order to be able to do that. So I just want to make sure that terms are known and clarified in terms of we are not sitting on bond dollars that are unspent. We would be outside of what is allowed by general statute, and those dollars are long gone.
So, and Wallace Avenue, the roundabout there is funded?
So that project is funded. We do have a negative shown in that project that is really for some of the property settlements that remain that push us there. In terms of the actual project and contingency needed, without that property settlements, we would be just fine. But there will be additional funds needed as we finish out a couple of those items.
Okay. And Becky, going back to the Pine Grove one, since we purchased the right of way, the design is 100% complete. We know what we want to do. We know how to do it.
Correct.
The issue comes down to the money, and then the other thing is, can you do most of this work at night or during the day? I know the state wants us to do it at night, which drives up the cost dramatically. How much could you do during the day? How much could you do at night? Could you split it? Like when you're doing the piece going, connecting Oleander to Pine Grove, that section where you're not going to be in traffic, you could obviously do that during the day. The other stuff you may have to do at night and limit the amount of impact it would take to do it at night or whatever.
Yes, that's correct, sir. And we've talked with NCDOT about that and gotten some feedback. I know that North project we did bid. We did have those conversations. We were also worried about the bidding environment at that time with that project, but we didn't get a huge difference when we had conversations about daytime work, although I do completely agree with you, there should be a significant difference. We hope when we rebid the project, we'll do it a little differently. With having some options in there for daytime work to hopefully reflect that and get some more information.
We just make sure when you do it, you put up there that we're doing this for public safety for the state of North Carolina. We're doing this on behalf of the DOT.
And
Right, Mike? We can do that.
And speaking of the DOT, there was a conversation with them that the MPO director had about cost share. Since that is a DOT intersection, they were not amenable to be contributing. I think there's a push to maybe see if there are other pots of money from DOT that could be tapped into before we fully exhaust that. But the general answer was no, thank you. But we will continue to try to push on that.
And then the roundabout at Pine Grove in Greenville, is that project, that design is done, what, is 100% complete?
Yes, sir. That design's 100% complete, and we just received final permits just earlier this week.
So it's just a matter of what is the cost?
Correct.
We have an idea.
I'd have to go look at the exact OPCC we have in the budget right now. I think in this slide, I think it's 14 million that we'd be looking for, that we would need to put in to finish that project.
Okay.
But we can get you the exact OPCC that our engineer put together.
So even if it just sat there and with the 100% design aspect of it, we could pick it up at any moment?
We could, keeping in mind that the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. Yep, but yes.
But then we might find ourselves in an environment where people are needing to bid work to keep people employed, and depending on what happens with the economy, I'm not a guru in that, but.
It's a gamble.
It's a gamble.
We have seen times in history where that has worked out. In other cases, because of the inflation that had happened before, it maybe just brings it down to the cost that it is now. Yeah, and with materials and tariffs and whatnot, I would be cautious.
On the bulkhead, just this is a side note. This is maybe nothing, but I know that north of the Memorial Bridge, they have, not to my knowledge, they've dredged in years. And, you know, they're talking about this 135 on the bridge. And if they were to dredge, let's just say hypothetically, if they were to dredge, have we ever analyzed if they were to dredge it to 42 going north, which at one time they talked about doing, what it would do to the bulkhead, or if it would do anything to the bulkhead? Would it compromise it in any way? Because obviously you're taking it to a certain depth, they're taking it to a certain depth. There's an erode in the wall, and then all of a sudden you've got a slide going, and the wall starts to fail on you. Because that's a pretty significant investment on this Riverwalk that we've got.
It absolutely is, and that was something that we brought up in our comments, that our infrastructure impacts to them deepening were not taken into account anywhere. So they, not only were they possibly raising the flood elevation, they were also not looking at some of our infrastructure impacts that they could possibly have negative impacts on, and costs that would be incurred. So that was a question for us, and what we asked of them.
Okay. Good. That's good. And then Hooker and Hinton, is that underway?
That is underway. We will have something coming to council update. Hopefully, we've kind of got a lot of fencing out there and everything else, but you'll be seeing in your council update, a project update on that one. But yes, we are underway on that project.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay.
The only other item that I wanted to bring up, this isn't in any slide, but Laura reminded me that I had wanted to bring it up. Just philosophically, it is by no means something that solves the budget, but as we've been going through the budget, one thing that did come up was related to our golf fund, and I believe a number of years ago, during, was it 2021 or 2020, council at the time made a decision to send $200,000 in general fund to support the golf fund. So that is a transfer out from our general fund that is happening and continues to happen every year. Wanted to sort of check in with council. Again, you don't need to make any decisions today, since this is sort of new information, particularly for some of you. But philosophically, from my position, golf fund should operate as a true enterprise fund, which means they are fully self-sustaining, and the rates and fees that are charged should be sufficient to cover all costs inclusive of operating that municipal golf course, to include staff, to include equipment, to include enough money going into a capital fund to be able to make the repairs and improvements and the added infrastructure that they want to see over time. That fund does not currently do that. We're looking at possibly needing a relatively small fee change just to have revenues match base operations. for FY '27, but that would not address the 200,000. So like that is an area that if we ran the model to have them fully sustain starting in '27, whatever that would do to fees, we would need to look at it, but that would be $200,000 that we could essentially recapture in the general fund, and it would offset, again, by no means fixes what we're talking about, but again, when you look at ways to ratchet those numbers down to start having actual tax rate impacts, that is something that has come up that that if there's appetite on council to make that change, we could bring that information to you, and that could be a $200,000 benefit to the general fund if we wanted to undo that previous
We know
position.
how many golfers played that course?
60,000?
I know it's 60,000
60,000
rounds,
rounds.
but out of the 60,000 rounds, I don't even know if you could extrapolate this. How many of them are not residents? Because we did have a program at one time that we would charge a little bit of a higher fee for those that are non-resident as opposed to the resident. We did away with that for certain reasons.
So
We could go back to that.
So they don't, because they don't have that program, they don't check to know specifically. I mean, I guess you could argue whether you're a resident or a non-resident, it's the same expense since it's a enterprise fund, that there isn't a financial benefit to the city either way.
What is the current rate?
Greens fee?
Yeah. And then there's a greens fee, then you get a card, and then you have those that don't have a card.
Then there's punch cards.
Then there's punch cards. I mean, there's.
I'm not a golfer.
I know, they've
Yeah.
got all kinds of programs over there. I can't figure which one's which, so. Amy?
Good morning. There, as you know, are a multitude of different fees, depending on whether you're playing a weekday, weekend, holiday, card, not card, but I would say the average is $49. $49. And so we are proposing, to balance the budget, a $2 greens fee increase this year and a $2 increase on the punch card. We have for a regular greens fee, if you live within New Hanover County, Pender County, or Brunswick County, you're paying one fee. If you're living outside of that area, you're paying a higher
Okay,
fee.
so you
So
do
we
have-
could give you that data. Years and years ago, we did have city resident versus non-city resident greens fees, and it was impractical to implement given the volume of play at the golf course and checking people's IDs. They came up to check in for their greens times, and people arguing, well, my license says I live in Wilmington, but okay, but you don't.
Right.
And so that's why we moved away from that. However, a city resident does have the ability to buy a discount card to where you're prepaying for a certain number of rounds a year at a discount, and that is available. We are checking to see if you're a city resident for that, so we can get you that data as well. But we have raised the rates 6 times over the last 10 years. It used to be more difficult to raise the rates. We have a little bit in terms of the negative feedback that we would receive from the players. I'd say the population that's playing the course has changed over time a little bit, especially since COVID. There's a lot younger of a population that's playing out there. I can attest that my son, who's 20, all of a sudden, all of his friends started playing golf during COVID. So I think that the rate increases are accepted graciously now, and we're still one of the cheapest, places to play in town. So $2 per greens fee, $2 per punch card, we're suggesting to go up to balance the budget. And then, and that's the 200,000 that Becky was speaking of, that the city manager was speaking of, is the golf, all the enterprise funds pay toward an indirect fee towards the general fund every year, and council a few years ago did make the decision to put that back into capital for the golf course. So we can balance the budget with those changes, and then we just won't have that capital funding to rely on in future years. But we do have the unassigned fund balance to
So
rely on
out
for
of that
capital.
fund balance, we're also replacing the carts. I know that we have gas carts out there.
So the next project on the capital priority list for
for Muni is to build a cart barn. And you may recall that was actually part of a larger renovation project to the clubhouse in 2018 that was value engineered out. So that design is expected to be complete any day now, along with the opinion of probable cost. And that will allow us, first of all, to better take care of the fleet of golf carts, because right now they're stored outside. But the cart barn is being designed with electrical capabilities to flip the fleet to electric carts in the future. So that's what we're going for. And so we have about 1.8 million in the unassigned fund balance right now. Victoria, you may remember what that percentage is. We just ran these numbers yesterday, what the percentage to the operating.
It's the low 70%.
So we're at about 70%. So we feel pretty comfortable with, I haven't seen the final cost estimate on the cart barn, but we do feel comfortable that we can transfer money out of the fund balance to complete that project and still have a healthy fund balance.
What is that, about 10,000 square feet? How big is the cart barn, do we know?
I'm so bad at
That's okay.
spatially estimating. We can send that to you as a follow-up.
And Amy, does this also include in the golf course fund inland greens, or is that totally separate?
Inland Greens is not part of the enterprise fund, that's part of the recreation operation.
Really?
General fund
But don't we
operation.
generate revenue off of inland greens?
We recoup about 80% at Inland Greens, so that's not an enterprise fund, but
Okay.
it's a very healthy cost recovery, and it's within the cost recovery tier. Council may remember that you adopted a Parks and Recreation cost recovery philosophy and policy last year, and that's at the highest tier where we want to be, recouping 70 to 100% plus, and we're in that range.
Well, when we talk with the Golf Course Advisory Committee, I know they're always, maybe sometimes at odds with them.
Passionate.
They're passionate about their business. I know that y'all go to the meetings and they have these meetings and blah, 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 and this and that. And they've been supportive over the years of some increases, and other years they've said, hold the line. Where are they? Do we know where they are this year? Do we have any idea?
I will be able to tell you that.
One way or the other.
I'll be able to tell you that after the April meeting. Initially, staff was not recommending a rate increase this year. We did a cart increase last year, and the year before that, we did a greens fee increase due to the health insurance costs and additional retirement costs that we're going to have to bear this year. That's why we're recommending the $2 increase. So we'll bring that news to them at their April meeting.
And we're at, how many rounds now?
63-ish thousand.
Pretty. It's probably more popular than any golf course in this area. Okay.
Yeah. Amy, I wanted to ask, and I do support the golf course being a full enterprise fund.
Yes.
And, but along those lines, and you kind of reminded me when you said that the demographics are changing. I know that in private courses, a lot of them are having trouble making ends meet because the demographics are changing, and a lot of younger people don't have the time to put into the time or the money to put into a sport that has the requirements of golf. Are we doing anything as far as offering programming are we offering any golf lessons to young people, and then expand that question across our other facilities for tennis and all that?
Sure. Muni does have a junior rate, pretty affordable, and we're not recommending a fee increase to that this year. We also, the city supports the First Tee program of Cape Fear and their home base. Their building is actually right across the street from the clubhouse at Muni, and the city leases that building to them for just $1 a year. And they have a practice facility at Muni. They reimburse a maintenance cost to the city for that every year, I think around $55,000 a year. In addition to the programming that they're doing at Muni, First Tee goes to our community centers, the MLK Center and the Davis Center, regularly for programming. So it's a really great symbiotic relationship that I have with them, that the city has with them. And it's not only introducing them to the sport of golf and trying to expand that demographic that plays golf, it's more of a life skills program as well. So it's definitely a dual purpose. And
that's a nonprofit.
That's a nonprofit.
And at no charge to the students, or is there? a fee to the students?
To the participants in
Yeah.
the First Tee program, I can't say for sure. I believe that it is free. At the very least, it's a nominal fee, and I'm certain that there are scholarships that people can participate in free of charge. And we offer junior clinic youth tennis programs at the Althea Gibson Tennis Complex, in addition
That's
to
through the city or through a nonprofit?
through the city.
Okay.
And then our youth athletics program overall is it's a robust program. It's one of the programs that I'm really proud of. In addition to regular youth sports programming, adaptive youth sports programming, we received a grant last year to expand and encourage girls to participate in youth sports more. That was really successful, and we're looking at applying for another grant here in the next few months to expand that program.
Thank you.
So we've got the greens redone, the irrigation is in, the clubhouse has been redone, right?
Yes, it's come a long way, and once hopefully the cart barn is finished, what we would look to do next is a master plan, in addition to the Pine Grove Drive crossing improvements, but get that master plan done before we entertain asking council to support any further capital improvements out there.
So I guess the way it's been explained to me is with the closing of Echo Farms and with the closing of the Cape Golf Course in New Hanover County, we picked up a lot more of that play. Plus, we're pretty competitive. So when you talk to some of the golf pros around, they're amazed at the amount of play that we get at the Muni. So that continues to be a healthy.
It does, and I have to attribute a lot of that to the staff that is taking care of the golf course. We have some really dedicated and proud people who take care of that golf course, and also want to remind council that after the 2018 winter storm in January, we suffered a lot of damage to the turf, a lot of frost damage, and not only did we have to remain closed for a while, but it was very costly to fix that. So we invested in greens covers after that, and we had to close the golf course for 3 weeks this January due to the temperatures, but we had already paid for the covers, and now we won't have to pay to repair any turf, and somehow miraculously we're still $37,000 ahead of where we were this time last year, even with that closure. So
it's good.
And we will double check the numbers before we confirm the $2 increase to make sure that we're accounting for the future capital needs so that it's a one shot. But there will be some level of fee increase proposed.
Becky, I could also have something else because
Sure.
it's sometimes we have to play defense here.
Yeah.
Could you also give me some of the rates of the surrounding clubs? Because when these guys or when these people
Yes.
call me, I want to say, oh, by the way, you can go play over here for $100.
Yeah, and anecdotally, I've heard that we are still quite low compared to a lot of our neighbors. So I think we will still be highly, highly competitive, if not still lower, even
It's still
with some
60,000
fee
rounds is a
increases.
lot of rounds if you put on that course in general.
When you bring us that, can you include the details of the junior youth discount? So that we better understand that.
yes, we'll send you the whole fee schedule.
And on that, on the first tee, when the 3 acres that the city owned, I know when we was built, I want to say it was 375,000 or something like that. It was part of that whole issue when we did the Wells Fargo here in Wilmington. There was a certain amount of money that was given, not all of it obviously, but there was some given. How did they pay for part of that? Or did we do
No,
all
sir.
that? Did we do most of that?
In terms of the investment to build
Yeah.
the practice facility, I have to go back and check that, but that still is owned and maintained by the city, by the enterprise.
But
fund.
they pay us, and they pay us
They-
back some on it.
First Tee does pay annually to contribute to that maintenance, yes.
And one final thing, Mayor Pro Tem's question about the number of staff that live within city limits. As of February 13th, 302 staff members, or 28%, lived in city limits.
28%.
28%.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have.
Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.